Well, this is wonderful to be here with you all. I couldn't resist an offer when Sue asked would I be interested in coming here to speak, and I've actually never been on the campus of Dartmouth, so this was a great opportunity. And of course, when you're, yeah, it's great. And you guys have been stuck in this room all day, as I understand it, so you're like so thrilled to be here right now. So I hope this will be engaging for you all. I'm going to try to get through it, but also if you've got questions or anything that comes up or ideas or thoughts, I'm happy to take them at the end of the session. I also want to say I've got folks on my team that are here. Mr. Doherty from our Boston market and his team are here. Sue, again, as an amazing board member, a National Board of Trustees member. And I want to thank a lot of folks that I've met here that have been volunteering and helping the March Dimes for a number of years, and appreciate all your help and appreciate all of your support. So one of the things I just want to start off with is really just talking a little bit about the organization and where we've been. I think Sue's right to talk about the fact that we are not the same organization that your grandmother probably got involved in. We have board members like Gretchen Carlson, whose mother walked her around her neighborhood collecting dimes. A lot of people know us from that. A lot of people know us from the days of polio. I'm going to talk about that. But we are very much a different organization. We were already becoming that, but certainly since I've started, I think our transformation has really accelerated. And I'm really excited about this idea and the topic that you all have been really focusing on around health equity, the social determinants of health, and equity and bias. And I know after today, and I saw the agenda, I know there are tons of ideas that are really churning around all of that. So I'm really interested in hearing a lot about what's on your mind about it. And I'm going to share with you what we are doing in this space and hopefully how we're hoping to be effective, especially around health equity with respect to moms and babies. So I'm here mainly because, this is who we are today. We actually transformed a lot of our framing of the organization and our brand and the way we position ourselves a couple of years ago. We are claiming this role of being the organization that leads the fight for the health of all moms and babies. And the word choice here is very important. Leading the fight was very intentional. A lot of people took some offense to it, actually, because fighting is, suggests some violence, and that's not what we're really talking about. But what we are talking about is the fact that we are facing some of the worst outcomes around moms and babies in this country, especially in this country as compared to all industrialized countries around the world. And so we're not in sort of a period of trying to achieve incremental change. We really are trying to do something transformational, and that means we have to fight some battles, we think, to get to where we want. And that is that we want and we see a future where all moms and all babies, irrespective of their race, their income, where they live, have an opportunity to have everything that they need to be healthy. The mothers before they're pregnant, during pregnancy, and after pregnancy, and also that their babies have that opportunity as well. And that is not an easy mission. It is something that I know you all are working on, not necessarily around moms and babies, by themselves, but you're working on a lot of these issues in your own respective careers, and so you know that this is a challenge. One of the things that we learned at the March of Dimes is that we are an organization that we're not going to be able to do this work alone. We've actually come to the conclusion that our role as a collaborator, as a convener, is incredibly important. That we have to encourage more cross-sector approaches, meaning we have to bring in not only healthcare providers and practitioners and those in the healthcare sector, but we have to look at other nonprofit organizations. We have to look at federal, state, and local partners. We have to look at the private sector as well and figure out how all those players can come together and collaborate and align around really effective solutions. We are doing a lot to work not only in community collaboration, but I'll speak a lot about some of the other work that we're doing, especially in research, in advocacy, in so many other areas. We've got a lot of work going on, and I'll touch on a lot of that. So we talked a little bit about the history of the March of Dimes. This gives you a sense of this. A lot of you may know, how many of you all know the March of Dimes was started by President Franklin Roosevelt? I think a lot of people know that. A lot of people know that our history goes back over 80 years when we were founded in 1938 to help in the fight against polio. Now, a lot of you all may not remember the polio days. I actually don't remember the polio days, but I actually, every week, if I'm anywhere, I meet someone who said that they remember those days, they remember getting the shots. I've met people that were in the early clinical trials. We were then called the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. And we were really an organization that was built to sort of almost democratize philanthropy. President Roosevelt put out a call and said, we as a country have to come together to solve this very important issue that was really affecting really millions of people in the country, especially young people. But what he said is that everyone can play a part in this. Everyone can be a part of the solution, even if it is sending a dime in an envelope to the White House. Everyone could be a part of this very important cause. And that sense of collective action, that sense of everyone coming together to do their part, to be a part of solving a community solution, is something that we're still holding on tightly to. And even more so, because some of the challenges that we're facing, especially as it relates to some of these outcomes around premature birth or maternal health, you know, there's not going to be a shot, a vaccine, a drug that's necessarily going to be the silver bullet answer. We feel like there's got to be a lot of heavy lifting from a lot of people to get this work done. And it's not just in philanthropy, it's in a lot of other ways as well. So as a result, what the March Dimes has done is transformed as an organization to work on these issues once polio got really solved, to really start to look at other issues that are affecting moms and babies, and to look at all of different tools that we have available to us to make a difference. So whether that's around advocacy, whether that's around support and comfort for many families who've experienced a really harsh outcome, our research and so many other things have become our tools. But one of the greatest tools is really the engagement of the community. And making sure, again, that everybody feels a part of this cause. And over the past 2 years, we really have seen amazing transformation. We've had to become very introspective in terms of looking at how we need to change. But we have put a lot of effort into making sure that we are an organization that can thrive, that can drive community-based change, population-level health change, again, working with so many others. I'm just showing this to you because I'm just a little proud of it. Plus, I thought these pictures were kind of pretty. We were based in, for many years, about 40 years, in White Plains, New York, in Westchester County. We had a wonderful building there. It was in the middle of the woods. It was in Westchester. I love Westchester. But it's not the hotbed of activity, right? It's sort of a nice, sleepy, quiet, wonderful community. When I started, it was at the end of 2016, and you all know what happened at the end of 2016. We moved into 2017. All of a sudden, there were amazing assaults on Obamacare, rolling back of all kinds of things. We had achieved this great thing of getting maternity care as a essential health benefit, and didn't want to see that go away. And I spent a lot of 2017 literally going to the Hill, going to a lot of different policymakers in Washington to fight the battle to make sure that we would not lose health care for so many millions of people, especially millions of women. And it was very clear in that year that if we were going to make a big difference in our work, that we needed to be in the place where we could have the greatest impact. And there was no question that needed to be in Washington, D.C. The problem is going to Washington is really expensive. So we were like, okay, let's go across the river because it's cheaper over there, where actually a lot of nonprofits are. So we actually are in Arlington and Crystal City. If you are land at Nashville Airport, and if you land at night, you'll look at one of those buildings, you'll see a little purple glow at the top floor of one of those buildings. That's us. So if you ever want to come and visit, we'd love to have you. We're right in the middle of Amazon land. So because we're coming to Crystal City, Amazon decided they would love to relocate to Crystal City. And we actually are surrounded by amazing construction because Amazon has selected Crystal City as HQ2. But this is just one of the many changes that we're making at the March of Dimes. I would say that we have transformed our organization by looking at the leadership. I have an entirely new leadership group. entirely new. A new chief health and medical officer, a new chief scientific officer, a new chief financial officer, a new chief development officer, and the list goes on and on and on. And with our new chief medical and health officer, a man by the name of Rahul Gupta, who was the former state health commissioner in West Virginia, who is a national leader in facing the opioid crisis, we've gotten even clearer on exactly what we want to do in the space of maternal and infant health, especially around prematurity, maternal mortality and morbidity, and even now a greater focus on the opioid crisis, especially babies that are born with neonatal abstinence syndrome. And so we're really pleased to have him with us and to have us shape policy initiatives and programs that we hope will make a big difference for a lot of babies in rural areas and urban areas and all around the country. So let me just jump into some of our issues, because I think this is kind of where the meat of our work is. And I would sort of we're going to create some buckets around some of our work and talk to you a little bit about what we're doing. I'll start with this issue of maternal mortality, which is so much more on the radar screen of so many more people. Although if you look at this chart, and this chart may not be surprising to a lot of you all, you will see that this has been a challenge in this country for a very long time. This is 2019. This is not, 1878. We have some of the worst rates of maternal mortality and maternal morbidity of any industrialized country in the world. In fact, our maternal death rates have doubled, more than doubled, over the past 25 years. And within it, we've got significant racial and ethnic disparities. Women of color are at risk of death as a result of pregnancy and childbirth. Black women face a 3 to 4 times greater risk of dying as a result of pregnancy and childbirth in this country. It is an outrage what's going on around maternal and infant health, but especially maternal mortality and morbidity. And what I would say is that the maternal mortality issue is really terrible. It's in the past year, the latest statistics we have, about 700 women died as a result of pregnancy and childbirth, but 50,000 women almost died. So just to look at the 700 women alone is to really understate the challenge that we're facing. So what are we doing about it? One of the things that we did, this is just one of the things, is last year in October, a month before the midterm elections, we decided that we needed to elevate this issue, build more awareness around it, and we decided that there was no better way to do it than to be, one, on the National Mall in Washington, and an eyesight and a stone's throw from the White House and from Congress. And what we did was we launched a campaign called Blanket Change. We laid 700 how many people have seen this kind of blanket? If you've had a baby, you know this blanket. You got pictures of them at home, your baby's in the blanket. We decided that we would lay 700 of these blankets, one for, it's almost a memorial, one for every woman who died as a result of pregnancy and childbirth in the last year, to elevate and raise attention around this issue. To encourage people to understand more about the issue, to take action. Again, this was right before the midterm elections. We actually challenged candidates running for office, Republican and Democrat, to take a stand for blanket change. Blanket change meaning comprehensive, transformative change that would improve the outcomes, health outcomes for moms and babies. We can't claim total responsibility for it, but I am really pleased to say that between our efforts and the efforts of a lot of organizations, 2 very important bills got passed at the end of last year. One was the Preemie Reauthorization Act, which is the only federal law dedicated to the prevention and the treatment of preterm birth, and then the other was the Preventing Maternal Deaths Act of 2018, which provided funding to states and tribes to establish maternal mortality review committees. A huge win. Yeah, thank you. So these laws were really important. They definitely, especially on the Preventing Maternal Deaths Act, it definitely put us on a path towards some of the change that we need to see. But it's only one step. We've got other kinds of bills that are pending right now. The Mamas Act, which actually addresses implicit bias in the health system and provides even additional resources to address maternal mortality and morbidity. There's a lot more we have to do, but we have to start with just building the awareness around these issues. There were so many people in this country, maybe not many of you in this room because you're more sophisticated and you're in this space every day, but there are many people who just are simply not aware of the challenges, the health challenges that moms and babies face. And we think that our role is to amplify these issues and to especially underscore that while the issue is challenging for any woman, almost in any community of any income range, it is especially a challenge for women of color, for women who lack resources, women who lack access to care. And we have been extremely intentional at the March of Dimes of not shying away from talking about that. Now, a lot of people have been shocked to hear the March of Dimes talk about that. But we feel as though, and when we talk about things and stand for things, we always do it in a way that's evidence-based. We always do it with the evidence and the research behind us to underscore and validate our stances and our positions on things. We believe very strongly that we will not make significant progress on improving maternal and infant health unless and until we deal with the challenges that exist, especially in communities of color and especially in underserved communities. So I want to just point out another thing that we did as a result of blanket change. This sort of underscores this. Last year we released the March Dimes Maternity Care Deserts Report, and it was called Nowhere to Go. It's on our website if you want to go to it, marchofdimes.org. What we found is that, and we have a perinatal data center, we do a lot of analysis and data to help inform policy discussions and all kinds of discussions. Our perinatal data center did this report, and what we found is that there are 5 million women who live in what we call maternity care deserts. How many people have heard of a food desert, right? So we know a food desert is some place, some geography without ready access to really healthy produce, healthy foods, nutritional foods, right? So think about maternity care deserts are similar. What we found is that there are 5 million women that live in these counties. 35% of all these counties are maternity care deserts. These are counties that lack even the basics of obstetric care. There's no hospital that offers obstetric services. There's possibly no OBGYN and no certified nurse midwife. 5 million women live in maternity care deserts, and these are 35% of all the counties in the entire country. An additional 10 million women live in counties with very limited access. And so on this map, the red are the maternity care deserts, and the sort of orange color are the severely limited access. The sort of beige and blue are slightly better. Where we are is slightly better than the rest of the country, I think. But you can see that through a lot of the South, I don't want to call out Texas if you're from Texas, but Texas has a lot of work to do. And I'm from Atlanta originally, so lots of part of the South, and then a lot of part of the Midwest. A lot of the rural areas, obviously, we know are a big challenge. This report is an indication. It's indicative of some of the work that we're going to continue to do going forward, but it has become the basis, this one study alone, of a lot of our strategies of what we're pursuing right now. Talked about maternal health, just to turn to infant mortality. There are almost 150,000 babies are born to women living in these maternity care deserts. We have a lot of work to do to make sure that these moms are healthy and especially that their babies are healthy. We do know that we have a lot of challenges with respect to disparities that are impacting our infants. We have an infant mortality rate among black babies that is more than double what it is for white babies. And we also know that the leading cause of death for children between the ages of 0 and 5 is premature birth and some of the consequences of premature birth. So this is a big issue, a big area of focus for us. One of the things that we do, in fact, the health center that is in Lebanon that's here, Dartmouth Hitchcock. We have a NICU family support program here. We have programs in about 60 hospitals around the country where we provide hands-on staff and support to families whose babies are in need of being in the NICU. And they may be in the NICU for days, for weeks, sometimes months. We provide the kind of emotional and all kinds of wraparound support care for these families. But what we know is that so many of the babies that are there, because of the disparate impact on communities of color, we have a lot of babies of color and moms of color, families of color that end up in the NICU. I wanted to show just a quick picture of what that looks like, an experience we see, and how this plays out from an equity perspective as well. This is a video of a mom that we know very well at the March Dimes. Her name is Gata Lewis. This is her daily journey just to see her premature baby at the NICU. And as you watch, think of all the mothers like her around the country, and look at her story and think about what this means not only for them but for their babies as well. And if we could dim the lights, that would help everyone see. Thank you. So that just gives a little snapshot of a story. Every time I see that, it makes me cry, so I kind of look at it with one eye because I don't want to start crying. These are the real experiences of moms every single day, and this is why we're focusing so much on the issue for all women, but again, why we focus so much on the inequities in this country. This is why we're really trying to create a movement around change. There are a number of issues around preterm birth, and I'll start with just showing another aspect of the work from our perinatal data center. Again, this is the report that they traditionally do and have done for a number of years. Every year we produce what's called the premature birth report card. What it does is it lays out across the country by state. You can drill down to even county level, the rates of preterm birth all around the country. We also assign a grade to the entire country and to individual states. This past year, for the third year in a row, the U.S. preterm birth rate has increased. It's just shy of about 10% at 9.93%. We've given the country a grade of a C. We're in New Hampshire. New Hampshire's preterm birth rate also rose, but it's slightly better than the rest of the country at 8.3%. It gets a grade of a B. And then you can see in red the states that have the most challenging preterm birth rates. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, West Virginia. Again, a lot of that because of access to care issues, a lot of rural areas for, obviously, places where the opioid crisis is hit. But what this map at this level, at the state level, doesn't really show is when you do look down at the county level, if you go even to smaller geographies, if you look in certain areas like Sue and I were just talking about in Philadelphia, there are neighborhoods in Philadelphia where the preterm birth rate might be at between 20 and 30% compared to the national rate of 10%. In Clinch County, Georgia, which is in the southwestern part of Georgia, and there are about 4 counties across the south between Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi that have rates just shy of 30% preterm birth rates. So it a little bit distorts the challenge, right? We're not doing great as a country overall. We're doing absolutely horribly in some key parts of the country, in some rural areas, and we cannot afford to let those communities be left alone. So I think one of the things that I want to just spend a minute on is to talk about, you all have been spending a lot of time talking about equity and social determinants of health and these disparities. You know, I do think there's a question about why these disparities exist. Of course, we know a lot about some of the areas, but I think it is important to really talk about the fact that we have lots of differences in our communities. There are a lot of different social factors that vary from community to community, whether it's around educational level or income levels, housing, neighborhood, safety, employment. There's so many issues that really create challenges within communities and really challenge any individual person's ability to maintain a decent level of health. We do think that raising awareness around these issues really helps everyone understand another big issue, and that is that many of our institutions actually perpetuate some of the stresses and the challenges that many people experience in their day-to-day lives, especially in communities of color. There are pervasive problems that can be traced back to our healthcare system, where some of these challenges exist, but we also know that the challenges are also even outside of our healthcare systems. But even in our healthcare systems, where we have to look at issues around quality of care, systemic challenges, implicit bias, these are issues that create challenges, and when they become additive, they become even more difficult for people to emerge with a sense of wellness and a sense that they could actually achieve quality health. Health disparities for us, in our viewpoint, continue to persist because of a lot of issues, chronic inequities, and unequal access to quality health care. The systems and the institutions that we think really devalue many women, especially women of color. You know, when you listen to the story of Serena Williams, for example, who literally had to go to amazing lengths to advocate for her own health care, as a woman with all the resources in the world, a woman that is a professional elite athlete who knows her body better than anyone. The fact that she did not feel heard and respected and listened to, if you can imagine that it happens for her, can you imagine what happens for that woman in Clinch County, Georgia? We have a report in D.C. That was just issued recently talking to Medicaid moms, listening to Medicaid moms, who repeatedly talked about the fact that, first of all, it's a maternity care desert. There's no hospital in wards 7 and 8, and that's where most of the Medicaid moms live. But on top of it, some of the community clinics that are there that they can even go for even prenatal care, if the receptionist at the clinic didn't smile, didn't say hello, didn't make eye contact, made that woman feel less valued, less respected, the chances of her coming back were very slim. But the chances were really high that she'd leave there, not come back, and tell everyone else and every other woman in her community, don't go to that place because they don't treat you well, and you're not going to get good help. And then we wonder why women don't come to prenatal care, or we wonder why women, don't make their appointments. This is the reality of when we talk about chronic inequities and systemic challenges. It sometimes it is about at the systems level, but it also comes down to individuals interacting with others and how we respect and engage communities of color, especially, to make sure that we're not making a terrible or challenging situation any worse. We have lots of research that shows the chronic and severe adversity that floods the body with all kinds of dangerous levels of stress hormones and creating what we know to be toxic stress, and how that can then impact maternal health and infant health. These are some of the issues that we have to talk about. It is uncomfortable. It doesn't make us always feel great. It feels like something that we can't fix sometimes. We don't even know where to turn, where to start. I think the first issue that we have to do is to be able to openly discuss them and decide as a community, as providers, as practitioners, that we may not have all the answers, but that we're willing to sit with others who might. And that's why the collective approach that we're taking in the March of Dimes, I think, is so important for us. It has always been important, but it's even more important. It's more important now, and it's going to be even more important as we move forward. I want to just take a second to talk about some of the other things that we're doing that I think can make, and in fact are making a big impact. We know that there are some programs and some efforts that really are evidence-based and that can actually lead to dramatic and significant results. One of them is around group prenatal care. We have just launched a new model of group prenatal care called supportive pregnancy. It's a program that shows results that are amazing, especially around preterm birth, but it also can provide amazing results in terms of maternal health as well. What the studies show, and our studies show, is that when there is quality supportive care, group prenatal care, the rates of preterm birth can be decreased by up to 30% for all women and up to 40% for women of color. These kinds of programs have been around and they're proven. Our job at the March of Dimes is to figure out if there are things that are working, how do we scale them? How do we get them into more communities? And that certainly is something that we're working on. I mentioned to you some of the work we're doing in advocacy. This work around maternal mortality review committees, I think, is going to be a huge win. Again, it's going to go so far. We're going to collect better data. We're going to be able to design better interventions. But we're then going to have to make sure that those interventions get put in place and that everybody that's touching women that could be impacted is a part of implementing those kinds of interventions. We also are, as an organization, working at the community level to make sure that these kinds of successful collective approaches really come to life. Ed Doherty, our executive director in Boston, is leading Boston Better Start, which is a collective effort bringing together a ton of different sectors and partners in Boston to address these issues around maternal and infant health. In Houston, our March of Dimes is leading the effort around a birth equity initiative in Houston to address equity and disparities in Houston as well. This idea of being a convener, a collaborator, and advancing on some of these challenges, using data, using evidence to make informed decisions, to introduce strategies that can make a difference, is something that we really see ourselves playing an important role doing as we move forward. A lot of you all know us from the research days. We're still heavily involved in research. We have 6 prematurity research centers around the country and now around the world, so to speak. We just opened a new 6th prematurity research center in London. We've got 5 that are here in the U.S. We are seeing amazing breakthroughs. I wanted to share with you a couple of them really quickly. One is fairly recent, just actually in the past couple weeks. So what I found really interesting, again, I'm not a health practitioner. I did not go to medical school. I sat with a guy who's a world-renowned geneticist who was our chief scientific officer when I first started. And he told me that, you know, Stacey, we know how babies are conceived, but after all of these many years of women having babies, we just simply don't know how delivery happens. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And one of the things that we started doing with our prematurity research center at Washington University in St. Louis is trying to figure out if there's a different way that we can detect contractions. And so what they did, the medical school working with the engineering school at Washington University, we developed a new non-invasive technique to view the pregnant uterus. And we call this the electromyometrial imaging system. It's EMI, E-M-M-I. It's taken about 5 years to get this point, but just a couple of weeks ago, there was a cover story in the journal Science Translational Medicine. This new EMI technique was featured in this article, and it involves displaying a color-coded, high-resolution 3D picture of uterine contractions. It's sort of like an echocardiogram for a heart. It's a device that can be put on a pregnant woman and actually detect where contractions are happening. And what we've been able to determine are contractions happening in women that are having a normal birth versus contractions happening in women that are having a preterm birth. And the idea is, now that we're moving to the next stage, is how can we start to create opportunities to either procedures or medications to interrupt or to stop contractions to actually prevent preterm birth from happening. So this is a new finding that's coming out of some of the early investments we made in our prematurity research centers. In our Ohio center, we've been able to identify some genetic relationships between certain gene regions and preterm birth, and actually now working on how we can develop some therapies to figure out how we can interrupt that interaction genetically so that we can actually prevent preterm birth. And then just recently at our prematurity research center at University of Pennsylvania, We have just put out a study that shows the difference in the microbiome, the cervical and vaginal microbiome, between women with normal pregnancies and women with preterm pregnancies. And that will hopefully lead us to some solutions that will actually, again, hopefully prevent preterm birth as well. So a lot of great things happening on the research side. A lot of great things happening on the advocacy side. I mentioned Preventing Maternal Deaths Act. This is a new bill that's just been introduced by Representative Robin Kelly and Senator Dick Durbin in Illinois. It's called the Mamas Act, and we have been actively involved in working on this bill, on other bills like the Family Act, where we are really providing advocacy support to make sure that working mothers get paid time off and family time leave off to take care of their babies or other members of the family. There are so many different pieces of legislation, not only just simply around the medical side of things, but even how women live, where they need different kinds of policies in place to ensure that they can be healthy, that they can take care of a baby who maybe was not born healthy, but clearly in this country, we're not providing the right kinds of systemic supports and policy. We don't have the right policy environment to make sure that moms and babies are as healthy as they can be. I do just want to mention that a big part of our work is also around just making sure that we have the ability to communicate with moms and babies of all walks of life. And if you've been looking at any of these pictures, you'll see this was, again, something you probably didn't see from the March of Dimes many, many years ago. But if we're going to seriously address equity and seriously address disparities, we felt that we needed to become an institution, an organization that can speak to those communities, that has a relationship with these communities. And so a lot of what you're seeing from the March of Dimes right now really is very targeted to ensure that our resources and our supports get to every woman where she needs it and every baby where he or she needs it. And again, that goes back to the whole idea that we don't think we can be effective in moving the numbers alone or collectively if we're not engaging all individuals across all communities. The last thing I'll just mention about that is a new thing that's just launching this week, which is how do we really engage everyone who's impacted by this issue of preterm birth or maternal mortality and morbidity, or if you just simply know someone, or you're not just a mom, but you're a dad, you're a grandparent. We were just talking about this at our table. I don't know how many of you all have known or seen anyone that's had a baby born preterm, or a woman that's almost died as a result of pregnancy and childbirth. If she's ever told you her story, God bless her. Because what happens for so many, many women, and so many dads, and so many other affected family members is that when something happens to your baby or in your family, a lot of us take full responsibility for that and carry so much blame, so much shame, and so much responsibility as if something we did actually causes. We don't know what causes premature birth. We're doing a ton of research to try to figure it out. We don't know all of what causes all of the challenges that women face as a result of pregnancy and childbirth. That's why we're doing so much of the work that we're doing. But what we felt is that we needed to sort of allow women a safe place, allow family members a safe place to share their stories, to remove that blame and that shame and that stigma. And so we just launched this new campaign this week called Unspoken Stories, encouraging anyone who's been impacted or feels a part of this issue and these challenges around premature birth and maternal health issues to share your story, to share it on social media, to share it and use the hashtag Unspoken Stories. The idea is that we'll be looking to form virtual communities and some in-person communities so that more and more people can come together and create a stronger support system. But the other part of this is that we feel like if we tell more of these stories, then this challenge of premature birth will be less of a mystery. The fact that premature birth is the leading cause of death for the children between the ages of 0 and 5, and very few people even are able to say that and know that, suggests to us that we are keeping this issue too limited to just those of us that are involved in this work every day. We have to make this issue broadly known and understood so that real change can happen. So I hope you'll get involved in this campaign. I hope you'll encourage others to as well. I could go on and on about the March Dimes. I love this organization, and we're doing so much great work. I'm just really honored to be here with you all, and I'm honored to just share a little bit about what we're doing. And just pleased that you all have this great opportunity to be a part of this amazing program. Sue has told me so much about it. I know that she has loved her experience here as the class of 2017. And I just want to tell you how honored I am that you all invited me to be a part of it. So thank you so much.